The music started at exactly 10 p.m., just like every Friday night. Soft jazz floated through the thin wall between our apartments, and I smiled despite my exhaustion. After 12 hours at the hospital, my feet ached and my scrubs smelled like antiseptic, but somehow my mysterious neighbor's weekend playlist always made everything better. I'd moved into apartment 4B 6 months ago, right after my residency started. The building was old, the walls paper thin, and the radiator clanged like a ghost with anger issues. But the rent was cheap and it was walking distance to the hospital. My neighbor in 4A had moved in the same week, but we'd never actually met. Our schedules seemed completely opposite. When I left for my early shifts, his lights were still off. When I came home late, his door was already closed. But I knew him through his music. Weekday mornings meant classical, usually Bach or Mozart, something structured and focused. I'd learned to time my coffee brewing to his morning routine. First movement, shower. Second movement, breakfast. Third movement, the sound of his door closing as he left for work. Evenings were different. Monday was blues night. Tuesday, alternative rock. Wednesday brought folk music, the kind that made you want to curl up with tea and a good book. Thursday was wild card night. Could be anything from Broadway soundtracks to obscure indie bands I'd never heard of. But Friday nights were special. Friday was jazz night, and it had become my favorite part of the week. Tonight, Miles Davis drifted through the wall as I kicked off my shoes and collapsed on my couch. I'd lost a patient today, a little girl with leukemia who'd fought so hard. The jazz seemed to understand, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. Then something unusual happened. The music stopped mid-song. I heard footsteps, a door opening, then a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole to see a man about my age, tall with messy dark hair and paint-stained fingers. He held a bottle of wine and wore an apologetic smile. "Hi," he said when I opened the door. "I'm Oliver, from 4A. I'm really sorry about the music. I just realized how thin these walls are, and I've probably been driving you crazy for months." "You don't need to apologize," I said quickly. I like it. The music, it's kind of become part of my routine." His face lit up. "Really? You're not just being polite? Really? Friday jazz nights have gotten me through some tough shifts. I'm Lily, by the way. I work at the hospital. A doctor who likes jazz?" I knew there was a reason I picked this building. He grinned. "Would you maybe want to share this wine?" Oliver's apartment was a mirror image of mine, but where I had bare walls and medical textbooks, he had canvases everywhere. Abstract paintings in brilliant colors, half-finished sketches, brushes soaking in jars of murky water. "You're an artist," I said, stating the obvious. "Guilty. I teach art at the community college, paint on the side. Hence the weird hours and constant music. I can't paint without it." He poured the wine and restarted the jazz. We sat on his paint-splattered couch, and I told him about my day, about the little girl, about how hard it was to lose patience. "That's why I paint," he said quietly, "to capture the things we can't hold on to make something permanent in a world that isn't." We talked until 2 a.m. about art and medicine, about music and life, about how we'd both moved to the city chasing dreams that sometimes felt too big. When I finally went back to my apartment, I felt lighter than I had in months. The next morning, I woke to find a note slipped under my door. Saturday morning playlist dedicated to the jazz-loving doctor next door. Hope it helps with the hard days. I pressed my ear to the wall and smiled. Ella Fitzgerald sang about blue skies, and I made coffee in time to the rhythm. That night, I decided to be brave. I made my own playlist, songs that reminded me of healing, of hope, of new beginnings. I turned it up just loud enough to drift through the wall. 20 minutes later, I heard a knock. A response playlist? Oliver asked, grinning. This is the best conversation I've had in years. Wait until you hear tomorrow's, I said. I'm thinking maybe some Beatles? Unless you have paint that needs angry metal music. It became our thing. Conversation through music, each playlist a letter written in melody. When I had a good day at work, I'd play upbeat pop. Bad days meant Adele or Sam Smith. Oliver responded in kind. Frustrated paintings meant punk rock. Breakthrough pieces brought celebration songs. 2 weeks into our musical exchange, I found another note under my door. Dinner? Actual conversation with words? Friday after jazz night. I wrote back. Only if you cook. I've survived on hospital cafeteria food and cereal for 6 months. Friday came, and Oliver's apartment smelled like garlic and fresh herbs. He'd cooked Italian. Comfort food, he called it. The jazz played softly as we ate and talked and laughed. His eyes were green with flecks of gold, I noticed. His hands moved when he talked, painting invisible pictures in the air. I have a confession, he said over dessert. I wasn't actually worried about the music being too loud. I'd seen you in the hallway a few times, always looking tired. Always alone. I wanted to meet you, but didn't know how. Then last week I heard you crying through the wall, and I couldn't just sit there anymore. I remembered that night. Another lost patient. Another failure that wasn't really a failure, but felt like one anyway. The music helped, I admitted. It always helps. It's like you somehow know exactly what I need to hear. Maybe I do, he said softly. Maybe we're just tuned to the same frequency. After that, the walls between us became less of a barrier and more of a bridge. We kept our separate spaces, but shared our lives through music and, increasingly, through actual time together. Oliver would leave coffee by my door on early mornings. I'd bring him leftovers when the hospital cafeteria actually made something edible. One particularly bad Thursday, I came home to find a new playlist already playing. But this one was different. Every song had the word beautiful in it. I sat on my floor, back against the wall, and listened. When it ended, I knocked on his door. Thank you, I said when he opened it. I needed that. You looked like you were carrying the world this morning, he said. Wanted to remind you that there's still beauty in it. Oliver, I started then stopped. How do you tell someone they've become essential to your day? That their music has become the soundtrack to your life? I know, he said. Me too. He kissed me then, right there in the doorway between our apartments. It was soft and sweet and tasted like possibility. I've wanted to do that since the first jazz night, he admitted. Why didn't you? Wanted to court you properly first. With music. He grinned. Did it work? Play me some Sinatra and find out, I said. We became the couple with the weird story. How did you meet? People would ask. Through a wall. We'd answer, laughing at their confusion. Oliver painted me a series called Songs Through Walls, abstract pieces that somehow captured the feeling of our playlists. I hung them in my apartment, color finally warming my white walls. 6 months after our first meeting, I came home to find a trail of notes leading from my door to his. Each one had a song title, Can't Help Falling in Love, At Last, Your Song, Marry Me. I followed them to his apartment, where Oliver waited with champagne and the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Is this a new playlist? I asked, already knowing the answer. The most important one, he said, dropping to one knee. Lily, you turn my solo act into a duet. Will you marry me? I promise to play you music every day, to dance with you in our kitchen, to be your soundtrack through all of life's movements. Yes, I said, laughing and crying at once. But I have conditions. No death metal before coffee. No breakup songs on our anniversary. And definitely no Nickelback. Deal, he said, slipping the ring on my finger. But I get to play our wedding playlist as loud as I want. Deal. We got married in our building's courtyard, with our neighbors as witnesses. Our first dance was to Miles Davis, the same song that had been playing the night he knocked on my door. We'd written our own vows, but they all came down to the same promise, to be each other's favorite song, in every key, for every season. Now we live in 4C, a bigger apartment that we share. The walls are covered with Oliver's paintings and my medical school diplomas. Music still fills our space, but now it's our playlist, our life, our love story told in melody and harmony. Sometimes I think about those months of listening through the wall, learning someone's heart through their musical choices. How intimate it was, how pure. We fell in love with each other's souls before we ever touched. Oliver says every great love story has a soundtrack. Ours just happened to come first. And every Friday night, we still play jazz. But now we dance to it together. In our kitchen, paint on his hands and stethoscope around my neck, writing our future one song at a time.